Okay, today we have the author of the new book, Here Right Matters, Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me on.
So, you've secured your place in history, so I feel like I'd be missing out on a major opportunity if I didn't start with this. Could you walk me through the events of the phone call?
Secured my place in history. I've heard at least one person refer to it as a footnote, which is a pretty harsh judgment by history. My ambition is to end up being more than a footnote in somebody else's entry. But it's a good starting point. So people, I guess, are familiar with me because of my testimony following President Trump's phone call with President Zelensky on July 25th, 2019. In that phone call, President Trump attempted to extort an investigation into Hunter Biden and implicate Joe Biden in wrongdoing in order to help advance Trump's incumbency and ability to secure a re-election in 2020. And I was the official on the call. I actually was the official that coordinated the call, requested that the call happened, monitored the portfolio, in maybe a small way exercised the poor judgment and to let this thing happen in the first place. But once it came off the rails, and there's a lot of backstory, I'm sure these questions will be asked, but this was not just history did not stop and start in that moment. So after the phone call, sensing that the president was trying to do this, steal an election, I reported to proper channels, and then ultimately a whistleblower complaint revealed this presidential wrongdoing, and I was called to testify in front of Congress. Sitting Army officer testifying against his commander-in-chief in an impeachment.
What was the phone call like in the sense that did you understand while it was happening the gravity of what was happening? So like for the rest of us, like once it kind of sank in, we all had the benefit of being able to look around and being like, wait, this isn't good, is it? But you were there in real time. It was happening in real time. So were you able to understand that gravity while it was happening?
I did. It was in a way a slow moving train wreck over the preceding months.
It's a good way to that's a good way to describe the entire last 4 years. But,
I think that's fair. I think that's fair with one caveat, because this is important to mention, is that you still had a enormous amount of just amazing public servants toiling away, trying to continue to advance U.S. national security interests, and in oftentimes not in a kind of a deep state looking to undo the president's policy, but to manage the crises that the president himself created unintentionally, mainly because of incompetence. That was kind of the labor over the past 4 years, and in a certain way, these folks that remain in government to this day still need to undo some of the damage that was created. Institutions were harmed, but I wanted to make sure I answer your question. So could you ask it one more time, and I'll make sure I answer
sure.
it.
That was. Did you understand the gravity of what was happening
Yeah.
while it was happening?
I did understand the gravity, and that's again because it was a train wreck. Because over the preceding months, you had non-governmental officials, folks close to the president's inner circle, intervening into foreign policy, into national security matters. That started to happen months before, ultimately resulted in Masha Yovanovitch being fired from her position as ambassador. It further undermined our ability to engage with Ukraine when Vice President Pence, the designated official to attend the inauguration, President Zelensky's inauguration in Ukraine, backed out. Continued to occur when Rudolph Giuliani proceeded to demand investigations into the Bidens. You had a hold on security assistance. You had all sorts of things unfolding. On that phone call, the only piece that was missing is who was the driving force. So I understood what was going on. What I understood, what the play was to favor the president in President Trump in the upcoming 2020 elections. But what I had maybe in certain ways, because of my reverence for the office of the president and being a serving military officer, tried to believe that the president, as bad as he wasn't involved. And the president coming on that line, the tone from the very beginning, suggested this was going to be a bad phone call. And when President Zelensky asked for more javelins to defend his country against Russian aggression, the president chimed in with, "I need you to do us a favor, though." It all kind of came together. And after that, I went to report this to the legal officials on the National Security Council to get this undone, try to stem the kind of the damage. And I walked into my twin brother's office because I wanted him to be a witness to my complaint. And I told him, close the door. I told him, "Eugene, if what I'm about to tell you ever becomes public, the president would be impeached." Never believing it was gonna become public, because there was, it's all in the classified space, but it did, and the president was impeached.
Are you able to say what Eugene said after that?
I don't recall. I think we just deliberated over, what this means. He immediately latched onto the gravity of the situation, and we discussed, whether it'd be wise to pull him into this meeting, because it would already. I was going to run into headwinds, and whether it was wise to pull him in. And we, that was a very, very brief discussion, because he's my twin brother, basically the closest person in the world to me, along with my wife and daughter. He was there for me. He joined me in reporting the phone call. He sat behind me when I testified. He was basically there all along the way.
Now, did you know you were going to be excommunicated immediately upon taking this to NSC officials and your brother?
I had hopes that things were going to turn out a different way. It was pretty clear to me really quite early on, even actually as I went in there. I mean, this is one of the things I discussed with Eugene as I was about to make the complaint to John Eisenberg, that there were going to be significant risks. This is a notoriously vindictive, Trump administration was a notoriously vindictive administration, the spectacle of firings and so forth. So I thought, worst case scenario, maybe I leave the White House. I had a year under my belt. It's a very successful year. I had an excellent evaluation from my boss, Fiona Hill. What's the worst that could happen? I'd move on. I would be in a good position to secure a promotion to colonel, to go on to the senior service college, which is like this very, very tough cut. Only a very small number, 7%, really make it to that level. So I thought I would still be in decent standing there. It turned out that my hopes in that regard were a little bit misplaced.
Now, what was the environment in the White House like for you in the events leading up to Trump's impeachment? Obviously, this started to come out, your involvement was known, and yet you still have to show up there to work every day in what you yourself conceded was a vindictive administration.
Sure. So, in the first year, I was a valued member of the staff with access to basically all of the leadership, the National Security Advisor, Deputy National Security Advisor, and almost immediately after making my complaint, I was ostracized. And this is really, frankly, when John Bolton was still in the seat, before he was fired and replaced by even a much less competent official, O'Brien. But I immediately, I was removed from trips that I should be on. There was one trip in August to Ukraine, Moldova, and Belarus, all three countries in my portfolio. It'd be unheard of for me not to go on that. So it was a signal that I was no longer in good standing. I was being cut out of meetings at the political level. But at the same time, the reason I stayed on is because I still thought I was well positioned to do good things. I was maybe politically unreliable to the kind of nefarious characters that were looking to serve the president's interests. But amongst the departments and agencies, the folks I work with, the deputy assistant secretaries, George Kent, Laura Cooper, other folks in other departments and agencies, those are two folks that testified. I was in good standing. I could still do my job. I still was able to operate within my office. It's just above that level, it became very difficult. And I knew that every action I was doing was scrutinized. They were looking for dirt on me, and whatever they could to kind of trip me up.
I know that Trump's acolytes will attack anyone who doesn't toe the line as some, far left communist Democrat. Did you identify as being part of a political party, or do you now?
So now I'm definitely, kind of bending towards the Democratic Party for a couple different reasons. And I've not had this question before, so I'm kind of glad that, I guess you asked it. I've been nonpartisan for the entirety of my military career. I mean, unfortunately, I took that to extremes and didn't vote too often in elections. I registered as an 18-year-old as a Democrat, but I grew up in New York City. That was kind of a natural thing to do. And I guess at some point later on, I registered as an independent, just because in certain states it's easier to kind of vote for whichever candidate you think is best positioned, whether that's primaries or general elections. But my own personal kind of leanings probably tend to be to hew a little bit closer to the right on foreign policy issues based on my firsthand experience and the desire to have a strong defense, but towards the left on social issues. I cannot kind of stomach the views of the mainstream Republican Party that's kind of bought into Trump's Trump and Trumpism, with disdain for people that are not white, that are regressive on unbelievably regressive on immigration issues. I'm an immigrant, so I take some of those things personally. LGBT issues, inequality, which is probably one of the fundamental issues affecting the United States. I think that the Republican Party is out of step with the bulk of society. And then even on the national security stuff that I probably tend to be a little bit more hawkish on, because I understand Russia and the fact that we need to take a strong line with Russia, that, I have probably a slightly more nuanced view on, budgetary issues and things of that nature. So it's I guess I could fall into the moderate category.
Now, there were two tranches of people who've spoken out publicly against Trump. There was the first one, while he was in office, the people who were retaliated against and skewered by Republicans. And that's people like you, Marie Yovanovitch, Fiona Hill. And then there was the second, people who've come out now that Trump's safely out of office. People like Bill Barr, who's trying to rehab his image now. Do you have any messages for the Bill Barrs of the world who've waited until the coast was clear to suggest that, in fact, they were also some saviors for democracy?
I take maybe a strategic view on this, and I say we should pick up all of the allies we can get. We are facing a very, very difficult struggle to wrestle a significant segment of society out of Trump and Trumpism. And we should listen to what they have to say. They probably have some valid criticisms, but that does not mean in any way that we should not hold these folks accountable. We probably need to, in a lot of ways, encourage more people to step forward, because on my drumbeat of accountability, these are folks that were in the know and knew all the misdeeds, know where the skeletons are, know where the bodies are buried. We need to encourage those folks to speak out and in certain ways be a little bit more measured in our criticism. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. These are people that had every opportunity to step out when it mattered going into elections, when it mattered to expose presidential corruption. They failed to do that. We should hold them to account, but we also need to hear what they have to say and add that ammunition to the fire that we need to apply to Trump and Trumpism. That is the biggest threat. And we shouldn't be kind of distracted by, seeking kind of retribution for some sort of tactical victory. We have a strategic objective in mind.
That's definitely fair. Do you see a link between a Republican Party that not only abandoned you, but tried to destroy you, and as a member of the military, which the GOP has sold itself as a strong defender of, and now how the Republican Party has not only abandoned but tried to destroy the police officers attacked on January 6th. And of course, the Republican Party's also branded itself as a strong defender of the police.
It is that is an absolutely disgusting feature of party politics and the Republican Party that exists today. It is hard to kind of understand a party that is so duplicitous, so two-faced, that in one moment can claim to be pro-national security, pro-defense, pro-police, and then demonize the folks with it coming out of those institutions that, and I'm not talking about myself, but the folks that held the line on January 6th, that epitomize service, selfless service. That is disgusting. And one of the things I've talked about repeatedly now is that those politicians need to be held to account. They're duplicitous. They fail to live up to their oaths and their obligations, and we should not let them off the hook. In upcoming elections, this should be thrown right back in their faces, and this should be one of the key items that they're addressed on. We should not, there's this mirage around policy disagreements and how the Republican Party still kind of adheres to principled policy approaches. That is not true.
Yeah.
They do not have a policy. They literally do not have a policy platform going into 2020 elections.
Yeah.
Who's backing Trump and Trumpism. So that is a red herring argument that, this is a policy disagreement. It's not. It's a culture war. And on one hand, we have cowardly, un-American, duplicitous behavior. On the other hand, we have folks that are trying to do the right thing. And I'm not even talking about politics or political parties. I'm just talking about the human beings that are kind of exemplifying trying to do something good for this country and are being attacked. This symbol I wear on my shoulder, the American flag, it means something to me. This is one of the reasons I've been wearing this on every appearance I had, pretty much, is because I want to take this symbol back. Americans, we too often now see this as a symbol of Trump and Trumpism. It is being stolen by a far right that, along with a Trump flag, flies an American flag. That is not what America is about. It's not about idolatry. It's not about the mirage of and the cult of personality around an individual. It's about the 50 states, all of us being together, e pluribus unum, and this is what the symbol means to me, and this is what I think we should remember, and we should all fly this symbol proudly. It's a symbol of hope.
Building on that, given your intimate experience with Donald Trump, what are your thoughts on the prospect of a presidential run in 2024?
I think it's unrealistic. I think the guy is going to do as much damage as he can. I mean, I'm not a political guy, so this is like as this opinion is as good as stopping somebody on the street or something like that. But from a strategic standpoint, it seems hard to fathom a 2024 run from a president that continues to kind of divvy up a pie and get smaller and smaller slices of the electorate. In the 2020 elections, President Biden blew out President Trump, 81 million to 74 million and change. That's a huge margin of 7 million votes, an unprecedentedly large margin. But even that, and that was a large segment of the electorate for President Trump. It's hard to kind of understand how that unfolded. I don't ask me how, but there's no question in my mind that after January 6th, that number shrank, and it continues to shrink with the provocation of the big lie and the divisiveness. So it's hard to imagine how he could be a viable candidate. It's quite possible he might make it through the primary, but he's not going to be a viable general election candidate. The question is, what does he do in the meantime? How much does he continue to polarize the party and make the Republican Party a shadow of itself? A Republican Party that at one point, the Grand Old Party that had honor on it because it was the party of Lincoln, is no way resembles what it is today. And I think that the president is going to pick, target individuals that are not Trumpy enough for him and make their lives a living hell, potentially be successful, a mixed bag of successes, but he's going to do an enormous amount of damage while he's doing that. And, I hate on the one hand, this idea of Trump stealing the airwaves because he does. But on the other hand, it's important to kind of denounce him and shine light on his corruption.
Let's end with this. You said while you were testifying, "Dad, don't worry, I'll be fine for telling the truth." What message do you have for your dad now that this chapter is finally over?
This was an important, I guess, element that both for me, because I took the time to address this with my dad. It was my twin brother that gets credit. He's the one that said I should make this entry into my opening statement to put my dad's mind at ease. But it's also kind of the broader message, I guess, of writing this book. The reason I wrote this book is that there was an opportunity to respond to all of the positivity, all the support I received that I couldn't possibly answer individually, but could potentially do it by writing a book and talking about the things that were important to me, what it was about my immigrant background, a feature that all Americans share, a deep roots or recent roots as immigrants, talking about service, which is unfortunately becoming a more distant concept because there are so few people that serve in the military. Something that I really strongly encourage, not just military service, but federal service, state service, community service, talking about that and what it means and kind of touting the abilities of our public servants in office and talking about, frankly, the tools I assembled through my experiences to navigate a very, very difficult affair. How to do the right thing in the right way, what it took to do that, and how to live with the consequences on the back end. Nothing has been easy. My dad was right in that regard. That there were personal costs. Nothing has been easy. Everything has been a challenge. Nothing has been given to me. I have had to continue to work really, really hard. But I could live with my actions. I could live with the consequences of my actions because I know they made an impact. And what I tell my dad is what I would tell other Americans. Doing the right thing is its own reward. It doesn't give you a free pass, but it does give you a way to kind of continue to live with yourself, look your children in the eye, and be the person that you want to be.
Well, he's got a lot to be proud of. So again, the book is Here, Right Matters. Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, thank you for taking the time to talk today, and thank you for standing up for what's right.
Thank you. Thank you.